Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and we are looking at business research and qualitative methods. So today we're going to review the methods of qualitative data collection and ethical, consideration in the research. Session overview includes the identify different kinds of qualitative data collection methods. Overview of the use of interviews and related issues. Overview other data collection methods, focus groups, qualitative surveys, pre-existing texts. Summarize some of the ethical issues in qualitative research, and to introduce the data set for the coursework. So, qualitative data is more, as we've looked at before, inductive research rather than deductive, more of the bottom up, and trying to find out why and how people feel, rather than finding out purely statistical information. So really on the emotive and emotional side of why people do things, qualitative data is best used for this type of research. So what is qualitative data? Typically textual rather than numerical. Allows the participants to respond in any way they choose. Typically more rich, detailed and responses in quantitative data, and can be analyzed, qualitatively or quantitatively. So some methods of data collection includes individual interviews, focus groups, qualitative surveys, pre-existing text, which is secondary data, observational methods, and diary studies. And qualitative research is something that you're going to need to use along with quantitative research. And being in a managerial type of position in a company, you're going to have to conduct at different times depending upon what your aims and objectives are and what problems you face. I would suggest both qualitative and quantitative primary research methods in order to solve or identify what the answers or possible solutions to problems. So interviewing, this is the most common method of a qualitative data collection. A conversation with a purpose. The practice of getting participants to talk about their experiences and perspectives in relation to a topic that the researcher has determined. I mean, I know for myself that I worked for Metro Products before, and I had to undertake qualitative research to determine how customers viewed our products, which was the mechanical steering wheel device, in relation to competitors. And we had focus groups, with an interview and qualitative research. We were videoing it with a two-way mirror. It was based in a research company based in Sutton, South London. And we were watching, and the questions we had obviously negotiated with the researcher in terms of detailing a kind of a funnel technique in terms of the questions, going from broad to more specific questions. And we got a lot of information and facts and feelings in terms of how people viewed our products. So this again was very, very useful. So this gave us a lot of information in terms of how our customers viewed our products in relation to our competitors, and in essence what we should be putting on our packaging to reinforce why we were different and why we were unique in terms of the competition. Types of interviews. Interviews can be structured, no deviations from the question order, wording of each question asked exactly as it is written. Semi-structured, where the questions may be recorded during the interview. Wordings of questions are flexible. And then unstructured, no set order of the questions, no set wordings of the questions. Again, and you might need to go deeper in terms of more unstructured questions to find out why people do what they do. If we think about the Diet Coke when it was first launched, I may have told you this before, that Coca-Cola had targeted both men and women, obviously a larger percentage of women. But when Diet Coke was launched, a vast majority of more women bought it, and the question is why. And having carried out, qualitative research to find out the reasons why in focus groups, they determined that men found the Diet Coke very feminine, and the wording and the way it was packaged and the way it was written on the cans and the box. And so this led Coca-Cola to develop Coke Zero with very strong, tough, masculine, strong, firm, thick lines. Again, so now we have Coke Zero and Diet Coke. Coke Zero for men and Diet Coke for women. Interview schedules are very important. The opening questions. Don't we start with telling me about how you met your partner? And you may want to take a broad technique and then narrow it down into a final technique rather than going straight into the specifics. Sequencing of questions are very important. As I said, you can't just go straight into more personal questions without leading people in from a broader perspective into the topic area. Wordings of questions, very important as well. Make sure that you're not leading people. Don't you think? You're leading people. You're telling them that you think this. Prompts and probes, research questions, are not interview questions. So closing questions. Is there anything else you would like to add? So a bad interview schedule, with the person next to you, identify problems with the below interview schedule. So here is the interview schedule. If you are not already married, are you planning to get married within the next few years? How many times a week do you have sex with your partner? And do you orgasm every time you have sex? Have you or your partner ever been unfaithful? I love going to the cinema with my partner. Do you? Well, I mean, hopefully you can see some obvious things which are wrong about this. So, what do you think about this? Discuss this with either the person next to you, or think about this yourself. How would you reword this to try and to get down to these answers? Or are these questions too direct? Bad interview schedule. Again, you can look at this yourself or with the person next to you. Look at these questions. Do you have a good time with your partner? Would you go to relate if you had problems in your relationship? When and how did you meet your partner? Who does most of the cleaning in your house? You or your partner? Do you earn more money than your partner? So again, this is an example of a bad interview schedule. Some issues to consider when conducting interviews. Some of these would include auto recording, so recording what you're actually saying so you can play it back, because you're not going to capture everything. Interest and empathy. Avoid being positioned as the expert, because you may not be. And avoid pressure to fill silence. So when the interviews go badly, first few interviews are unlikely to be perfect. Participants can be reluctant to talk, and that's a potential problem. How do you get people to talk and to express and to open up and to trust? Some can be hostile or overly friendly, and they may take the interview off topic, so you're going off topic, so you might need to bring them back on topic. Weaknesses of interviews. Some include time consuming. It takes a lot of time to recruit the people, making sure that you're recruiting the right people. What incentive are you offering these people to actually do these interviews? Because people's time are short, so it's time consuming. Requires skill and practice. And data is contrived. The case for more naturalistic data. Focus groups. A group discussion focused on a topic of research. Uses interaction among participants as data. And the researcher aims to facilitate discussion rather than taking a question answer format. So it's to get people to open up and to kind of interact with each other. If you've got more of a focus group. Strength lies in the participants responding to one another's contributions. Typically consists of approximately 6 participants. Focus group schedules. in many similar ways of an interview schedule. However, the aim is not to facilitate discussion between participants. Often less questions than in the interviews. May use visual or other prompts. So the main aim here is to get people to open up, get people to talk, get people to discuss things. So less questions and more prompts and maybe use of visual aids as well to assist you. Some strengths of the focus groups. It's more like a naturally occurring discussion than an interview, and you're kind of like developing it, and you need to really make the people feel comfortable and to be able to open up. It's more participant driven, it's more resource efficient, and it can be less daunting for participants. Weaknesses of focus groups, logically, difficult. Can be difficult to manage the group, less data generated per participant, often longer than interviews, and it can also be more difficult to transcribe in terms of determining what you're actually getting out from this, determining what you've derived from that focus group, and is it correct in terms of what you derived as well. Qualitative surveys. These are a series of open-ended questions on a topic, and participants write free text responses to each question. These are self-administered, hard copies, paper and pen, or online. It can include images, video, audio clips as question prompts. Strengths of qualitative surveys: quick and inexpensive, allows for large samples and wider diversity of perspectives. And it's good for sensitive topics because someone's not in front of you, so you're doing it yourself. So they offer greater anonymity. Require less skill and experienced researchers. Additional weaknesses include responses are typically short and less detailed, so it may not get you all the answers that you want. It may leave you open to more questions about what you've looked at. The researcher cannot ask participants to elaborate or clarify their responses. Respondents may misunderstand the questions. Respondents may fail to complete the survey, or they may not be bothered, or they may not put their time into it, may just fill it out for the sake of filling it out, not giving the correct answers. So what are pre-existing texts? These are secondary sources of data. The researcher has to roll in the production of the data. It's typically publicly available. Examples include magazines, newspapers, televised debates, online material, it's from websites, blogs, forum discussions, and published autobiographies. So some of the strengths of pre-existing texts, they're a quick form of naturalistic data, quick, inexpensive, and relatively easy to access, can be used to answer a range of research questions as well. Weaknesses of pre-existing texts: can be difficult to find appropriate data to answer your specific research question, and you might find that some of it answers part of it but not really all of it, so you might need to do a lot more research to find out these pre-existing texts to answer all the things that you need or you're researching. Some sources are harder to assess systematically, and ethical grey areas around the use of some forms of online data as well. Sampling in qualitative research, we've got deep in terms of gathering in-depth information but narrow, few participants, and then you have shallow, which is less in-depth information but wider in terms of more participants. So we look at the sample size, a rough guide: interviews, small projects, 6 to 10 interviews; medium, 10 to 20 interviews; large project, 20 interviews plus. Focus groups, 2 to 4 focus groups for small, 3 to 6 for medium size, and 10 for large projects. Doing the focus groups, getting the right people in, getting them interviewed, getting them set up, the interviewer, it does take a long time. Qualitative surveys, small project, 15 to 50 respondents; medium, 50 to 100 participants respondents; and large projects, 100 plus respondents. And then pre-existing texts, you may, in terms of a small project, 1 to 100, medium 1 to 200, and large 4 to 400. So some of your sampling strategies, qualitative samples are not designed to be representative of a population. So this is the main difference, really. So you take a sample size in terms of your defined population, but it's not a representative sample. Therefore, the inferences that you make from that qualitative data cannot necessarily be inferred to say that this is representative of the total population. Often sampling is purposive, convenient sampling, snowball sampling, and sometimes aim to sample for a diversity of different perspectives. In terms of some of the ethics, you need to consider the risk in terms of research involving sensitive, upsetting topics, research involving vulnerable groups of people, and the risk to the researcher as well as the participant. So, you need valid consent, so be clear about what kinds of things they will be asked about, and seek explicit consent to audio record as well. You need to think about confidentiality, how the information will be used, how the information will be stored, and personal information. Anonymity, in terms of changing, omitting identifiable information. And also giving advice. Interviews are not therapy sessions. Again, you need to think about, deception. Very rarely any need to deceive participants in qualitative research, but you don't want to do that. And debrief. Don't end an interview on a very sensitive, upsetting topic. Provide an opportunity to talk without being recorded. Often send copies of the transcripts or a summary of the findings. Direct them to appropriate sources of information and support as well. So a debrief is necessary, especially on potentially sensitive topic areas. So summary and conclusion. We looked at the method of qualitative data collection, types of qualitative data collection, and we've taken into consideration some of the ethical considerations in qualitative data collection. So thank you today from Mr. Tan.